Welcome back to PLATO Online classes. So, Andhra Pradesh Public Service Commission కానివ్వండి లేదా తెలంగాణ స్టేట్ పబ్లిక్ సర్వీస్ కమిషన్ కానివ్వండి, సో రిలీజ్ చేయబోతున్న గ్రూప్ 1 ఎగ్జామినేషన్స్ లేదా గ్రూప్ 2 ఎగ్జామినేషన్స్ లేదా గ్రూప్ 4 ఎస్ఐ అండ్ కానిస్టేబుల్ ఎగ్జామినేషన్స్, సో వీటికి సంబంధించి ప్రిలిమినరీ ఎగ్జామినేషన్ పాయింట్ ఆఫ్ వ్యూలో మనం చూస్తే there is one particular topic, general science in day-to-day life. Alage science and technology developments, at the same time the recent advancements. You find this particular topic there. So APPSC recent ga release chesina group 4 examination point of view lo kavachu leda telangana lo kavandi AP lo kanivandi adi twaralo raabotuna notifications annitiki sambandhinchi సైన్స్ అండ్ టెక్నాలజీని మనం ఏ స్టాండర్డ్లో చదవాలి, అట్ ద సేమ్ టైం ఏ టాపిక్స్ మీద మనం ఫోకస్ చేయాలి, అలాగే సైన్సెస్ అంటాం డే టు డే లైఫ్లో సైన్స్, అదేవిధంగా వాటి యొక్క అప్లికేషన్స్ ఏంటి, కాన్సెప్ట్స్ ఏంటి, సో వీటి మనం ఎలా ప్రిపేర్ అవ్వాలి. సో వీ నీడ్ టు హ్యావ్ అన్ ఐడియా రిగార్డింగ్ దాట్ పర్టికులర్ థింగ్. సో మొదటిగా సైన్స్ అండ్ టెక్నాలజీ చూసినట్లయితే, so which topics have to be focused from science and technology point of view? So for any particular competitive examination generally conducted by the state public service commissions, so we'll conduct chestunna examination point of view, the topics which are very very important are the very first one, development of S&T in India, nuclear energy, space technology, defense, computers and information technology, energy resources and biotechnology. So these are the topics that we need to focus, keeping in view any particular competitive examinations that may be by APPSC or as the case of your TSPSC. So apart from these things, we need to have a basic idea regarding the applications of various concepts in case of your physics, chemistry, as well as the case of your even biology also. So that is what we call it as the general science, its applications, general science in day-to-day life, and at the same time science and technology, at the same time the recent developments in the field of S&T. So today we are going to discuss what are the topics that we are going to study, that we need to prepare, keeping in view any particular competitive examination. So the very first one, that is the case of your development of S&T in India. So the moment you're talking about this particular topic, that is the development of S&T in India, so what are the things that we need to discuss here? What are the topics that we need to focus here? So the moment you talk about development of S&T in India, we need to talk about the case of your various research scholars. So we'll be discussing about the case of your research scholars here. The research scholars who have contributed for the development of S&T in India. The moment you're talking about the case of your research scholars, it means that you need to talk about the case of research scholars right from the ancient period. You're talking about the ancient scholars. Then you talk about the case of your medieval period scholars, and then at the same time the case of your the modern period, the research scholars, as well as the case of your research scientists. So all those particular persons who have contributed for the development of S&T during different periods here. Then after the research scholars, we need to focus on the case of your policy documents. The moment you're talking about the case of your policy documents, so here we're talking about the case of your 1958 science policy, or it's the case of your 1983 national technology policy, or as the case of your 2003 science and technology policy. At the same time, the 2013 national science, technology and innovation policy. So in each and every particular policy, the focus was laid on various fields, various sectors which are related to the development of science and technology in India, right from the very first policy till the 2013th policy. At the same time, very soon we are going to have one more policy, right? Probably you can call that one as 2022 policy or so, or maybe implemented by 2023. But very soon we are going to have even one more policy. So we need to have even an idea about the case of your that particular policy. If that particular policy is coming into picture before our particular examination, then at the same time, when talking about the case of your these policies, we have got one particular thing called as your intellectual property rights, IPR. So the moment you're talking about the case of your intellectual property rights, the question arises here. When this particular intellectual property rights have been implemented, from when we have been implementing this IPR in India? At the same time, first thing, what is meant by intellectual property rights? At the same time, the intellectual property rights can be claimed in which particular things? So, the moment you're talking about the case of your IPR, intellectual property rights, you talk about the case of your copyrights. You talk about copyrights. At the same time, you talk about the case of your patents. And then at the same time, you talk about the case of your trademarks, trade secrets. Now, all these particular things, they are nothing but your intellectual property rights. At the same time, the most important one as of now, that is the case of your geographical indications. So you talk about the case of your different geographical indications which have been allotted very recently, the last 1 year or 1.5 years. At the same time, we need to even focus on the importance of those particular geographical indications. Now, the moment you're talking about the case of your geographical indications, for example, we're talking about these are the things for which recently geographical indications have been allotted. Now, this is one particular thing which are calling it as the Sorai cover paintings, right? We call them as Sorai cover paintings. Now, these particular Sorai cover paintings, they belong to which particular place? What is the importance of these particular Sorai cover paintings? We should have an idea about these particular things. At the same time, you talk about the case of your Telia Rumal. This is from the state of your Telangana. So, what is this particular Telia Rumal? What is the importance of this one? Why geographical indication has been allotted to this particular cotton product? Not which you are calling it as Telia Rumal. At the same time, you're talking about the case of your this particular black colored thing. This is nothing but your black rice, which is grown in northeastern part of India, which is known as chakhao. Now, the name of this particular rice is chakhao. So, what is the importance of this particular chakhao rice? Why this is given recently allotted the geographical indications? At the same time, we talk about the case of your terracotta toys. Right. Now, these particular toys, Gorakhpur terracotta toys. Now, the moment you're talking about these particular Gorakhpur terracotta toys, they have got a speciality here. That is the reason why they have been allotted the geographical indications. So, what is the type of the clay? What is the name of the clay that is used in the making of these particular toys? At the same time, we talk about the case of this particular chili. The chili which is found only in the northeastern part of India, which we call it as Hatay chili, which is found in the northeastern part of India. At the same time, the oranges. Again, these particular oranges, they are found in only the northeastern part of India. The specialty is that the weight of each and every particular orange will be somewhere around 234 grams on an average. Each orange will be weighing around 234 grams. So we need to have an idea regarding the specialty of these particular oranges. The vitamins that are found in these particular things. So why these particular oranges, why these particular chilies, why the toys, they have been allotted the geographical indications in the recent years. At the same time, these particular geographical indications are valid for how many years? We should have an idea regarding these particular things. So apart from the geographical indications, so here in this particular case, we were discussing even about the case of your National Science Congress meetings. So when these particular National Science Congress meetings are held every year, what is the reason why the Science Congress meetings are held every year? At the same time, what is the focal theme of these particular Science Congress meetings? Focal theme of Science Congress meetings. So each and every particular Science Congress meeting has got a focal theme. We should have an idea what is the focal theme of each and every particular science congress meetings. Then at the same time, you talk about the case of the schemes, the different schemes which have been launched by the Department of Science and Technology. The schemes, why these particular schemes have started. Now you talk about the case of the schemes for brain gain. So in case of your 2003 policy, the focus was on to stop the brain drain. So here you're talking about two different terms, that is, one is brain drain program and the other one is brain gain program. So what is the difference between brain drain and brain gain? Why the government has started various programs for brain gain? So what are those particular programs? That is what we need to have an idea here. So here you're talking about the case of your imprint program. So whether you're talking about the case of your imprint, or else whether you're talking about the case of your Kiran program, or else you're talking about the case of your Inspire program. Right, you have got number of programs. You have got one particular program called as your Satyam, science technology, right? Science and technology for yoga and meditation. At the same time, you're talking about the case of your Atal Innovation Mission. What is Atal Tinkering Labs? Why these particular labs are being established? So all these particular things we'll be discussing in the very, very first topic, that is the development of science and technology in India. Then, the moment you talk about the case of your next one, that is the case of your nuclear energy. So in case of your nuclear energy, the very first thing, we need to have fundamentals. We need to have an idea regarding the difference between nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. What is the basic difference between fission and fusion? Why we are calling this one as fission? Why we are calling this one as fusion? We should have a basic idea regarding that. At the same time, why nuclear fission is known as a chain reaction. This is what is known as chain reaction. Why we are calling this nuclear fission as a chain reaction. At the same time, you talk about the case of your controlled chain reaction, uncontrolled chain reaction. We need to have a basic idea regarding these particular things. At the same time, the moment you're talking about the case of your nuclear power program in India. So the development of nuclear power program in India, it is a three-stage program. It's a three-stage program, and this particular three-stage program was designed and developed by H.J. Baba, Homi Jahangir Baba, who is also known as the father of Indian nuclear energy. And for this particular three-stage program, he has designed a particular process for that. So what is the type of the fuel that we are going to use in the first stage? What is the fuel that we are going to use in the second stage? What is the fuel that we are going to use in third stage? Right. So here in this particular case, you have got three different stages. This is what you call it as the stage 1. At the same time, the case of your stage 2. At the same time, the case of your stage 3. So the different fuels that we are using at different stages. And at the same time, you talk about the case of the uranium deposits in India. At the same time, the case of your thorium deposits in India. The moment you talk about the case of your uranium, now we know that we have uranium deposits in both the Telugu states. We have uranium deposits in the Nallamalla forest region, which is spreading across both the states, Telangana as well as the case of your AP. So this is one particular region where we have got this particular uranium deposits. At the same time, we have uranium deposits in Jharkhand state. At the same time, the case of your Rajasthan and some other areas. What is the importance of uranium? What is the amount of uranium that is deposited in India? At the same time, here we talk about the case of your thorium deposits in India. So where do we have this particular thorium deposits? Which states ranks number 1 in thorium deposits? And then you talk about the case of this particular thing. This is known as ITER Project. Alright, this is known as ITER Project, International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. So why this particular ITER project is being started? Who are partners of this particular ITER project? When this will be completed? And what is the contribution of India for this particular ITER project? This particular thing we'll be discussing in case of ITER. At the same time, In case of nuclear energy, we'll be discussing even about the case of your nuclear policies. At the same time, the case of your the nuclear test that India has conducted, the nuclear treaties, all those particular things we'll be discussing in case of your nuclear energy. Then after nuclear energy, we'll move on to the case of your space technology. So the moment you're talking about the case of your space technology, when it started, who has started this particular space technology? The first person to enter space, the first satellite, the first living being. At the same time, the moment you talk about the case of your space technology in India, how space technology in India started. Now here you can see one example. Space technology in India started with the launch of particular rockets. And those particular rockets, they were carried on cycle in the earlier stages. Right? When INCOSPAR was established. How that particular INCOSPAR later got converted to ISRO. Where is ISRO? Where is the headquarters of ISRO? At the same time, the different organizations which are working for ISRO. You're talking about the case of your ISRO and its regional centers. ISRO has got almost around 15 to 20 regional centers which are working across the nation. So what is the role of each and every particular organization? What is the role of each and every particular center? We need to have an idea about that particular thing. At the same time, the moment you're talking about the case of your satellites are placed at various heights, in various orbits, depending upon the requirement, depending upon the usage. Now, these particular orbits, you classify them into two different types of orbits. One is an equatorial orbit, one is a polar orbit. So, we need to have an idea about what is the difference between the equatorial and polar orbits. Which type of satellites are placed in equatorial orbits? Which type of satellites are placed in polar orbits? At the same time, the moment you're talking about the case of very equatorial orbits, again you're further dividing these particular equatorial orbits into the case of your LEO. What is meant by a LEO orbit? In LEO orbit, what is the time taken by a satellite when it is revolving around the Earth? You're talking about the case of your MEO orbit. The moment you're talking about the case of your MEO here, right? So in case of your MEO orbit, which type of satellites are placed in case of your MEO orbit? And then at the same time, you talk about the case of your GEO orbit. What is GEO? The types of satellites that are placed in GEO orbit. The time taken by a satellite which is placed in GEO orbit to complete one rotation around Earth. We need to have an idea about these things. Right? At the same time, you talk about the case of your different types of your launch vehicles. So for placing a satellite in a particular orbit, we use different types of launch vehicles. Either you are using the case of the very first generation, which you're calling it as satellite launch vehicle, or else you're talking about the case of your augmented satellite launch vehicle, or else you're talking about PSLV, the third generation launch vehicle, or as a fourth generation GSLV. So in case of your SLV, ASLV, PSLV, GSLV, so what are the differences here? What is the difference between SLV, ASLV, PSLV and GSLV? We need to have an idea about these things. So after these particular launch vehicles, then we move on to the case of your recent developments in case of ISRO. The moment you're talking about the case of your recent developments in case of ISRO, here we are going to discuss about NAVIC. What is NAVIC? At the same time, we talk about the case of your Indian Regional Navigational Satellite System. What is IRNSS? At the same time, what is NAVIC? At the same time, ISRO has recently signed some agreements with some other companies regarding the installation of this particular NAVIC in the upcoming mobiles. Which companies are these? And to which country they belong to? Right? These particular companies, they belong to some countries. To which country they belong to? We need to have an idea about that thing. At the same time, we talk about the case of one of the most prestigious projects which is taken up by ISRO. That is the case of a Gaganyaan mission. So for the very first time, ISRO is going to send astronauts into the space from Sriharikota, nothing but your Satish Dhawan Space Center, for the very first time. So for that particular thing, ISRO has already conducted some experiments for that one. You talk about the case of your CARE module, right? You talk about the case of your CARE module, or else you talk about the case of your RLV. So what is CARE? What is RLV? Right? What is pad abort test? So we'll be discussing about all these particular things. Then you talk about the case of your the next topic, that is the case of your computers and IT. So before we go into case of your computers and IT, we need to even speak about the recent developments in the field of space. The moment you're talking about the case of your SpaceX company, or as the case of your NASA, or as the case of your NASA's Parker Solar Probe, at the same time James Webb Telescope, which is being recently launched. So regarding all these particular things, we need to have a basic idea. Then we move on to the case of your computers and information technology. So the moment you talk about computers and information technology, in case of your computers, we talk about the case of your different types of computers. Whether you're talking about an analog computer, digital computer, or there's a hybrid computer, what's the differences between them? At the same time, in case of your computers, we talk about the different generations of computers. When different generations of computers have been started, what are the examples of the different generations of computers? At the same time, we're talking about the case of supercomputers. Now, what is this particular supercomputer? What is the use of this one? And for developing supercomputers in India, what are the programs or what are the things that the central government has started? At the same time, the world's fastest supercomputer, India's fastest supercomputer. We'll be discussing all those things. At the same time, in case of your computers, we'll be discussing even the basic fundamental things. The components of computers, whether you're talking about the case of your hardware or software, or as the case of your languages, right? The computer peripherals, the basic things which are related to each and every particular computer. And then you move on to the case of your quantum processors. So what is the difference between a supercomputer and quantum processor? Why these particular quantum processors are gaining importance in the present day life? Then after that, when you talk about the information technology. So the moment you're talking about the case of your information technology, in case of your information technology, we'll be discussing about the case of various issues that are emerging out. That may be the case of your Pegasus, which is considered as an anti-spyware, or else the case of your cybersecurity laws. At the same time, the different terminologies that we are using in case of your internet, in case of your information technology. That may be the case of your LAN, WAN, MAN, right? All these particular terms. Or as the case of your difference between Li-Fi and Wi-Fi. What is 5G? Right? At the same time, the different programs. Like for example, you talk about the case of your e-governance. At the same time, Digital India. At the same time, the case of your various programs which have been started by the central government. Now, for example, here you talk about one particular thing called as your Umang. This particular symbol, this is meant for the case of your Umang. Right? At the same time, you talk about the case of your bit currency. Nothing but your bitcoins. Here you're talking about the case of your bitcoins. Now, bitcoins is one particular thing which we have been recently using this one. Right? So, nothing but your cryptocurrency. Is Bitcoin the only cryptocurrency that is available to us? Or else do we even have any other cryptocurrencies? So, what is this particular Bitcoin? What is blockchain technology? That particular thing we'll be discussing in case of your computers and information technology. Then, we move on to the case of your defense. So, the moment you're talking about the case of your defense, we'll be speaking about the case of your different armored forces in India. At the same time, CDS. The reasons why CDS has been appointed. At the same time, the case of the very first CDS, the Chief of the Defense Staff, whom we have lost very, very recently. At the same time, what is the role of CDS? These things we'll be discussing here. At the same time, the different types of missiles. Whether you're talking about the case of your Prithvi missiles, or as a case of Agni missiles, or as a case of your BrahMos missiles. At the same time, the S-400 missile system which India has recently procured from Russia. Or else you talk about the case of your INS Vikrant, which is under sea trials. At the same time, you talk about the case of the INS Vishakhapatnam, which has been recently launched. INS Vishakhapatnam. This has been recently inducted into the Indian Navy officially. Right? We'll be discussing all these things. Apart from this one, the modern technology in case of your defense. That is the case of your advanced shaft technology, or else the case of your hypersonic technology demonstrative vehicle, or else the case of your Marich. All these particular things we'll be discussing in case of your defense sector. At the same time, the moment you talk about the case of your energy resources, you have got one more topic called as your energy resources. So in case of your energy resources, we'll be discussing about the case of your conventional energy resources, and at the same time the case of your non-conventional energy resources, conventional as well as non-conventional energy resources. At the same time, the very recently concluded summit, recently concluded meeting, you talk about the case of your International Solar Alliance. So what is this particular International Solar Alliance? At the same time, regarding the case of your ethane gas emissions, right? So it called as a methane gas emissions. So what is this particular COP26? And in that particular COP26, why we have discussed about methane? At the same time, the different agreements that have come into picture in the recent terms. At the same time, in case of your non-conventional energy resources, you talk about the case of your wind energy, you talk about the case of your solar energy, you talk about tidal energy, or at the same time the biofuels. All these things we'll be discussing in case of your energy resources. At the same time, for promotion of these particular non-conventional energy resources, or as the renewable energy resources, the programs that have been started by the central government of India, whether you're talking about the case of your Surya Mitra program, or else whether you're talking about the case of your Solar City program, right? The different programs that have been started, Kusum program, the different things, all these things in case of your energy resources. And then finally, the case of your biotechnology. So the moment you're talking about the case of your biotechnology, in case of your biotechnology, we'll be discussing about the case of your various types of diseases here. Various types of diseases. So the diseases which keep on spreading from one person to other person. Why we are calling COVID as a pandemic? What is the difference between pandemic, epidemic, and endemic? At the same time, what are communicable diseases, non-communicable diseases? At the same time, we talk about the case of a COVID-19, the different vaccines that we are using for COVID-19, the types of vaccines. So the moment you're talking about the case of a types of vaccines, you talk about the various things. That is a live attenuated vaccine. Or as you're talking about the case of mRNA vaccines, viral vector vaccines, toxoid vaccines. So vaccines as well as the case of the different examples of those particular vaccines. At the same time, we talk about universal immunization program. Now, when this program was started, and what are the vaccines that are given as a part of UIP. Then at the same time, you talk about the black fungus, white fungus, yellow fungus, the different types of diseases. Whether you're talking about the case of your the diseases that are spread by bacteria, the diseases that are spread by viruses, the diseases that are spread by protozoa. At the same time, the different viruses, the different types of bacteria, all these things we'll be discussing in case of your biotechnology. Apart from that one, what is meant by genetically modified crops? At the same time, what is the recent technology that we are using here? At the same time, we talk about the case of your assisted reproductive technology bill, which was passed in the parliament very recently. What is this particular ARP? So why this particular ARP has importance as of now? At the same time, what is CRISPR technology? All these things we'll be discussing in case of your biotechnology, right? So the moment you're talking about the case of your science and technology, basically we say that this is one particular subject, this is one particular topic wherein constant updation is very important. Constant updation. Regularly, we just need to keep on updating these things. So the moment you're talking about the case of any particular competitive examination, this particular topic, this is one particular topic wherein we need to focus on the traditional things which are there in the textbook, which are available in different materials that are available to us. Apart from that particular thing, we need to even focus on the current issues also, right? So these are the things that we're going to discuss in case of your science and technology. So this will be helpful for any particular competitive examination, whether you're talking about the case of your group 1 or group 2 or group 4 or any particular examination, any particular competitive examination. That includes even SI and constables also, right? Thank you.